Welcome to the Forbidden Library podcast. I'm your host, Ben Carter. In the twilight of the Middle Ages, a clandestine world was taking form. It was a world that thrived in the shadows, whispered about in hushed tones, and feared by many. This was the world of ritual magic. As the flames of the Inquisition swept across Europe, a parallel universe of knowledge was being carefully penned in texts. Manuscripts that held forbidden knowledge, ancient wisdom, and arcane rituals. These were not merely works of fiction or fantasy, but serious treatises on the mystical and the metaphysical, penned by some of the most learned minds of their time. These manuscripts held the keys to a realm of magic and mystery, a realm that was as enticing as it was terrifying. Imagine, if you will, the scribe, huddled over a parchment by candlelight, the air heavy with incense and secrecy. Wielding a quill like a sorcerer's wand, he meticulously transcribes formulas of power, arcane symbols, and mystical diagrams, each stroke a testament to a knowledge that was as ancient as it was forbidden. What was it that these medieval magicians were attempting to achieve, and what secrets did their texts hold? Many of these texts were grimoires, handbooks of magic that contained instructions for rituals, the casting of spells, the summoning of spirits, and even the creation of magical objects. They were works of complex symbology and profound philosophy, bridging the gap between the natural and the supernatural, between the realm of the living and what lies beyond. One of the most famous of these texts is the Grimoire of Pope Honorius, a text allegedly written by Pope Honorius III, who served as the pontiff from 1227 to 1227. This text, filled with prayers, spells, and rituals, was intended to summon and command demonic forces. The authorship of this grimoire has been disputed, but it is generally agreed that it is a product of the medieval fascination with the occult and the hidden. Then there is the Sworn Book of Honorius, a medieval grimoire said to be one of the oldest and most influential magic texts. It is a compendium of spells, incantations, and procedures focused on knowledge and prediction, including methods for communicating with the angelic realm. The Sworn Book is believed to date back to the 13th or 14th century, and its practices have influenced countless other magical texts. From the darkness of the Middle Ages, these texts speak to us of a time when the boundaries between the physical and the spiritual, the mundane and the magical, were not as rigid as we perceive them today. They stand as testament to the human desire to understand the universe and our place in it, to push beyond the boundaries of the known, and to explore the vast, uncharted realms of the unknown. As we delve deeper into these texts, we find ourselves drawn into a world of mystery and magic, a world that still echoes with the whispers of the past. As we immerse ourselves in the world of medieval magical texts, it's essential to understand the historical and cultural landscapes that gave rise to these remarkable works. The Middle Ages, spanning from the 5th to the 15th century, were a time of profound religious and philosophical transformation in Europe. The fall of the Western Roman Empire in the 5th century ushered in a new age of political and social turmoil, but it also paved the way for the rise of Christianity as the dominant religious force. This religious context played a significant role in shaping the creation and interpretation of magical texts. Throughout this period, the Church held steadfast control over education and scholarship. Monastic libraries were the primary repositories of knowledge, and monks were often the only ones who possessed the literacy skills to transcribe and interpret texts. Yet, despite the Church's monopoly on education, or perhaps because of it, there was a burgeoning interest in the occult and the mysterious. Magic was seen by some as an alternate form of knowledge, one that challenged the Church's authority and offered insights into the nature of the universe that went beyond the canonical teachings. The medieval understanding of magic was vastly different from our modern perceptions. Magic wasn't deemed as inherently evil or demonic, but rather as a part of the natural world. It was believed to be a part of God's creation, a hidden dimension of the universe that could be understood and harnessed. This viewpoint allowed for a somewhat paradoxical coexistence of Christian faith and magical practice. Grimoires, the magical handbooks we've been discussing, were not only repositories of spells and rituals. They were also products of an era that valued the systematic codification of knowledge. Like the scientific or philosophical texts of the time, these grimoires were meticulously structured, often presenting their contents in the form of complex diagrams, tables, and lists. This approach to organizing magical knowledge reflects the broader intellectual trends of the Middle Ages, which placed a high value on order, hierarchy, and classification. Yet, despite their structured nature, grimoires were also deeply personal works. Each grimoire was unique, reflecting the philosophical outlook, spiritual beliefs, and personal experiences of its creator. In this sense, they were not just manuals of magic, but also testimonies of individual journeys of spiritual discovery and self-realization. Understanding these historical and cultural underpinnings helps to shed light on the complexity of medieval magical texts. Far from being mere curiosities or relics of a superstitious past, these grimoires were the products of a time of intellectual fervor and religious exploration. They represent a unique intersection of faith, magic, and the relentless human pursuit of knowledge. As we delve deeper into the narrative of medieval magic, it's crucial to understand the physicality of the grimoires themselves. These were not mass-produced, readily available tomes one could pick up from the local book fair. No, these were unique, meticulously crafted manuscripts, each one a labor of love and a testament to the commitment of the practitioner. The primary material for grimoires was parchment, made from the skins of sheep, goats, or calves. The production process was laborious and time-consuming. The skin was soaked, scraped, stretched, and finally dried to create a thin, durable writing surface. With the parchment prepared, the scribe would then lay out the page, marking the margins and drawing guidelines for the text. Ink was made from a mix of gallnuts, iron salts, and gum arabic, creating a dark, durable substance that would not fade or smudge. The scribe would write using a quill pen, usually made from a goose or swan feather. This process was slow and painstaking, requiring a steady hand and a keen eye. Mistakes were not easily corrected, and so the scribe had to be careful with every stroke of the pen. Once the text was inscribed, the grimoire might be illuminated with gold leaf or colorful pigments, turning each page into a work of art. This wasn't merely an aesthetic choice. The intricate designs and illustrations were often part of the magical workings, imbued with their own symbolic meanings. These grimoires were often bound in leather, with clasps or straps to keep them closed. Some were small, designed to be carried around, while others were massive tomes, intended for study in a library or scriptorium. The sizes of these books varied greatly, reflecting the diverse uses and needs of their creators. The physicality of these grimoires is a testament to the dedication of the practitioners who created them. Each book was a significant investment of time, resources, and skill. They were not just repositories of magical knowledge, but also physical manifestations of the practitioner's commitment and devotion. But these books were more than beautiful objects. They were living entities, imbued with the spirit and energy of their creator. Each grimoire was a unique artifact, a tangible connection between the material and the mystical, the human and the divine. They were bridges to the unseen world, tools for navigating the complexities of the cosmos, and keys to unlocking the secrets of the universe. The grimoires of the Middle Ages were not just books. They were sacred objects, repositories of wisdom, and expressions of spiritual aspiration. They were the product of a deeply personal and profoundly human desire to understand and engage with the mysteries of existence. They were the tangible embodiment of a quest for knowledge that transcended the boundaries of the known and ventured into the realm of the magical and the mystical. Within the leather-bound covers of these grimoires, a wealth of arcane knowledge awaited the steadfast and initiated reader. The works were filled with complex rituals and ceremonies, many of which revolved around the invocation and control of spiritual entities. These beings were often categorized into hierarchies, reflecting the medieval world's love for order and structure. Many grimoires, for instance, outlined the ranks of demons or angels, detailing their powers, domains, and the precise methods required to summon and control them. Yet these texts were not solely about the supernatural. They were also repositories of practical knowledge. Many grimoires contained recipes for potions, tinctures, and ointments, some of which had medicinal purposes. Others offered instructions on making talismans or amulets, charged with protective or empowering energies. These texts carried a strange fusion of the sacred and the mundane, the extraordinary and the ordinary. Some grimoires, like the infamous Key of Solomon or the Book of Abramelin, were filled with detailed rituals that required extensive preparation and long periods of purification, often spanning months. These rituals were high-risk endeavors. They could result in divine enlightenment, or they could unleash destructive forces if not handled with utmost care. And this is where the dangerous ideas came into play. Many grimoires contained warnings and admonitions about the misuse of magic. They stressed the importance of purity of intent, respect for the spiritual entities involved, and the dire consequences of hubris or negligence. Yet, the allure of obtaining power and knowledge often proved too tempting for some practitioners, leading to tales of disastrous magical experiments gone awry. These tales of spiritual entities turning on their summoners or magic backfiring on its practitioners were widespread during the Middle Ages. There was a real fear associated with these texts, a sense of trepidation mixed with awe. These grimoires were seen as dangerous not just because of the knowledge they contained, but also because of the potential for misuse and the resulting repercussions. It's perhaps no surprise, then, that these books were often shrouded in secrecy. They were not intended for casual reading or the faint of heart. They demanded respect, commitment, and a deep understanding of the spiritual and metaphysical principles they embodied. The grimoires were seen as gateways to immense power and knowledge, but also as vessels of potential peril, revealing the paradoxical relationship between knowledge and danger, power and responsibility, that has continued to characterize our relationship with the occult. Now, we turn our attention to the physical and historical authenticity of these magical texts. The Middle Ages, spanning from the 5th to the 15th century, was an era characterized by a blend of diverse cultural, religious, and intellectual influences. This diversity is reflected in the vast array of grimoires that have survived to this day. But how do we ascertain the authenticity of these texts? How do we know if they are indeed products of the Middle Ages or later fabrications? The physical condition of these texts provides some clues. Many of these grimoires are parchment manuscripts, written in ink, and often beautifully illuminated with illustrations and diagrams. Their age can often be determined through radiocarbon dating, a technique that measures the radioactive decay of carbon isotopes within the parchment. The handwriting style, known as paleography, and the language used can also offer hints about the time period in which the text was written. However, the physical condition of a grimoire alone is not sufficient to verify its authenticity. For instance, a grimoire could be a later copy of an earlier work, or it could be a deliberate forgery. Thus, historians also look for corroborating evidence from other sources. This could be references to the grimoire, or its rituals in other contemporary documents, or historical events that align with the content of the grimoire. Consider the Key of Solomon, one of the most famous grimoires. Its authorship is traditionally ascribed to King Solomon, the wise king of Israel from the 10th century BC. However, the oldest surviving copies of this text date back only to the 14th or 15th century AD, suggesting that it was likely composed during the late Middle Ages. Furthermore, its rituals, symbols, and magical operations are consistent with the magical traditions of that time period, such as Solomonic magic and the use of celestial symbols. Yet, despite these clues, the origins of many grimoires remain shrouded in mystery. They were often written anonymously or under pseudonyms, and their authors frequently claimed ancient or divine inspiration to bolster their authority. This obscurity is part of the allure of these texts, contributing to their enduring fascination. To truly appreciate these grimoires, one must understand that they are more than just books. They are artifacts of a bygone era, reflecting the beliefs, fears, and aspirations of their time. They are tangible links to a past where the boundaries between the physical and the spiritual, the natural and the supernatural, were more fluid than they are today. They invite us to step into a world where magic was not just a fanciful notion, but a practical reality, deeply intertwined with the rhythm of everyday life. In the shadows of their creation and use, grimoires and ritual magic texts also faced significant censorship, suppression, and gatekeeping. This was largely due to the prevailing societal, religious, and political norms of the Middle Ages. For many, the knowledge these texts contained was deemed dangerous, heretical, or morally corrupting, leading to widespread efforts to control their dissemination and use. The Church, as a dominant power in medieval Europe, played a significant role in this. In the 12th century, for instance, Pope Innocent III decreed magic as heretical, effectively outlawing grimoires and their associated practices. This was further cemented in the 14th century when Pope John XXIII issued a papal bull or edict, formally condemning all forms of magic. Those found in possession of such texts or practicing their rituals could face severe penalties, ranging from excommunication to execution. But it wasn't just the Church that sought to control these texts. Secular authorities, too, feared the potential disruption they could cause. Kings, queens, and rulers often maintained a close watch over magical practices, fearing the potential for their power to be undermined. In England, for example, laws were enacted throughout the Middle Ages that made witchcraft and the use of magic texts a capital offense. Grimoires were also subjected to gatekeeping. This was a process whereby only certain individuals, usually those of high social standing or part of a specific group, were permitted access to these texts. This was often implemented out of a belief that the knowledge contained within was too dangerous or powerful for the uninitiated. For instance, members of secret societies, such as the Masons or the Rosicrucians, often had exclusive access to certain grimoires. To gain entry to these societies and access to their texts, one typically had to undergo a series of initiations or tests. And yet, despite these efforts at suppression and control, grimoires and the knowledge they contained endured. They were secretly copied, shared, and practiced, often under the cover of darkness or in hidden corners of society. They became symbols of resistance and empowerment for those who sought knowledge and power outside the sanctioned channels. They also fed into the broader human yearning for the unknown and the forbidden, a yearning that continues to fuel interest in these texts to this day. However, The effects of this historical censorship and gatekeeping still linger. Many grimoires have been lost forever, their knowledge extinguished in the fires of persecution. Others exist only in fragmentary form or in heavily redacted versions. As we delve deeper into the world of medieval grimoires, we must bear in mind this fraught history and the gaps it has left in our understanding. The Middle Ages was a time when the spiritual, occult, and mystical were interwoven into the very fabric of daily life. Life was difficult and unpredictable, and the ability to somehow influence or predict the course of events was powerful indeed. It's here that we see the profound implications of grimoires and the rituals they contained. The rituals, spells, and incantations found in grimoires were not just abstract concepts or theoretical exercises. They were deeply connected to the spiritual beliefs and practices of the time. For the practitioners, these rituals were a means to commune with the divine, to tap into the unseen forces that govern the universe, and to seek protection, healing, or favor. The rituals echoed the liturgical practices of the Church, which also used ritual, symbolism, and the invocation of divine powers to effect change in the world. The spiritual implications of these texts were profound. The grimoires offered a pathway to a different kind of spiritual experience, one that was more personal, more direct, and perhaps more potent. They suggested that an individual, regardless of their social standing, could access and harness the divine forces that the Church claimed exclusive dominion over. This was a potent and radical idea, one that challenged established power structures and offered a tantalizing promise of spiritual empowerment. The occult implications of grimoires were also significant. The term occult, from the Latin occultus, means hidden or secret. It refers to knowledge of the hidden, the mysterious, the supernatural. In the context of the Middle Ages, grimoires represented a body of occult knowledge that promised to reveal the secrets of the universe, to unlock the mysteries of nature, and to provide mastery over the unseen forces that shape our lives. Lastly, one cannot overlook the mystical implications of these texts. Mysticism, in its broadest sense, refers to the pursuit of communion with, identity with, or conscious awareness of an ultimate reality, divinity, spiritual truth, or God through direct experience, intuition, instinct, or insight. Grimoires, with their rituals and spells, offered a mystical journey, a path towards a direct, experiential understanding of the divine. In summary, grimoires and the rituals they contained were not just tools of magic. They were spiritual guidebooks, occult manuals, and mystical roadmaps. They offered a different way of engaging with the world, the divine, and oneself. Even today, these texts continue to captivate us, perhaps because they speak to something deep within us, a yearning for connection, for understanding, and for a touch of the magical in our lives. It's a remarkable fact that echoes of medieval ritual magic texts are still very much alive in our modern world, making their mark on diverse aspects of culture and subcultures. This influence is perhaps most clearly seen in the realms of contemporary media, fantasy literature, and film, where the imagery and concepts of ritual magic are frequently employed to create immersive, fantastical worlds. The popularity of books, such as J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter series and Ursula K. Le Guin's A Wizard of Earthsea, testify to the continued fascination with magical rituals, ancient grimoires, and the idea of individuals being able to harness supernatural forces. These fictional narratives often borrow heavily from medieval magic texts in their depiction of spellcasting, the summoning of spirits, and the use of magical symbols. They weave together elements of the mystical and the occult, offering readers an escape into worlds where the boundaries of reality are fluid and enchantment is a part of everyday life. Beyond literature, the influence of medieval ritual magic texts can be seen in the gaming industry as well. Role-playing games such as Dungeons & Dragons have mechanics and lore that draw on these ancient sources, offering players the opportunity to embody characters who wield arcane powers. Even in the realm of video games, franchises like The Elder Scrolls and Dragon Age feature spellbooks, magical scrolls, and arcane rituals that bear a close resemblance to the practices outlined in historical grimoires. Modern subcultures, too, have been influenced by these texts. The contemporary pagan, Wiccan, and occult communities often draw upon the rituals and symbolism found in medieval grimoires. These groups see a direct link between themselves and the practitioners of magic in the Middle Ages, viewing the texts not just as historical curiosities, but as living traditions with practical and spiritual significance. In the world of art and music, the influence of these grimoires is also palpable. Bands within the genres of doom metal, black metal, and folk music have been known to incorporate references to medieval magic texts in their lyrics and album artwork. Similarly, visual artists working in the realm of the fantastical often draw inspiration from the rich imagery found in these ancient books. While it's clear that these echoes of the past are prevalent in our modern culture, it's worth considering why this might be the case. Perhaps it's because these texts represent a kind of forbidden knowledge, offering a tantalizing glimpse into a hidden world. Or perhaps it's because they speak to a deep-seated human desire for magic, mystery, and the promise of hidden powers. Whatever the reason, it's undeniable that the legacy of medieval ritual magic texts continues to resonate, shaping our stories, our games, our subcultures, and our imaginations. Weaving through the mainstream interpretations, it's time to examine the fringe theories and hidden interpretations surrounding the medieval ritual magic texts. These are conjectures that often tiptoe on the edges of conventional academia, but nonetheless offer intriguing lenses through which to view these ancient grimoires. One such theory suggests that these grimoires were not merely manuals for magic, but encoded political treatises. In an era when expressing dissenting views could result in severe punishment, it's conceivable that intellectuals and free thinkers may have coded their critiques of the establishment in the guise of arcane rituals and magical spells. The complex symbolism and allegory of these texts could potentially contain veiled jabs at the ruling powers of the day. Another theory posits that the ritual magic texts were not written for human eyes at all, but were designed to communicate with non-human entities. Adherents of this theory argue that the complex diagrams, specific rituals, and precise wording were intended to summon or communicate with supernatural beings. Some even suggest that the illustrations found in many grimoires are actually visual representations of these entities, drawn from first-hand encounters. A more controversial theory claims that the grimoires are evidence of time travel. Proponents argue that the advanced knowledge contained within these texts, particularly in areas of astronomy and medicine, could not have been known to the people of the Middle Ages. They suggest that the only plausible explanation is that these texts were brought back from the future. Finally, there's the theory that these magic texts were not meant to be taken literally at all. Instead, they were psychological tools designed to facilitate personal transformation. The rituals, spells, and symbols, according to this theory, were not intended to change the external world, but to alter the consciousness of the practitioner. They were early forms of what we now call personal development, or self-help literature, aimed at guiding individuals towards self-awareness and personal growth. These theories, while not widely accepted, provide a fascinating perspective on the medieval ritual magic texts. They highlight that these ancient grimoires are not simply historical artifacts to be studied and catalogued, but enigmatic puzzles waiting to be deciphered. They remind us that these texts continue to hold secrets, and that perhaps we have only just scratched the surface of their true significance. As we conclude this journey through the labyrinth of ritual magic texts from the Middle Ages, we find ourselves awash in mysteries and questions. Even with the theories and interpretations we've explored, these ancient grimoires remain enigmatic, their secrets still closely guarded, their meanings not fully untangled. Each theory we've pondered opens new avenues of thought. If these texts were indeed coded criticisms of the establishment, what does that tell us about the socio-political climate of the Middle Ages and the courage of these arcane writers? If they were created to communicate with non-human entities, what might these entities be, and what knowledge could they have imparted? The time travel theory, while controversial, invites us to consider the nature of knowledge and discovery. Could it be that the so-called advanced knowledge in these texts was not advanced at all, but simply the result of different ways of seeing and understanding the world? Could it be that what we consider advanced is only a reflection of our own limited perspectives? And if these texts were psychological tools for personal transformation, what does that say about the timeless human quest for self-understanding and self-improvement? Could it be that the ritual magic of the Middle Ages was not so different from the self-help literature of today? These questions, and countless others, linger in the air like the remnants of an ancient incantation. They remind us that history is not a closed book, but a living, breathing entity that continues to evolve and reveal itself in unexpected ways. As we delve into the mysteries of the past, we are not simply uncovering ancient truths, but also exploring the contours of our own understanding. The study of ritual magic texts from the Middle Ages is not just about understanding what was, but also about questioning what we believe to be true now. It's about challenging our assumptions, broadening our perspectives, and embracing the complex, multidimensional nature of knowledge. And so we are left with a sense of awe and wonder, of curiosity and intrigue, as we stand on the threshold of the known and the unknown. The ritual magic texts of the Middle Ages continue to beckon us, inviting us to step into their world, to explore their mysteries, and to seek out their hidden truths. The journey may be fraught with uncertainty, but it promises a wealth of insight and discovery, an adventure into the depths of the human experience and the vast expanse of the universe itself. And isn't that, after all, the true magic of these ancient texts? Thanks for listening. This has been the Forbidden Library Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you'd like to support the show, subscribe to the Forbidden Knowledge Network on Patreon. Subscribe now.